Welcome to part 2 of this tutorial series where we are creating this stylized cartoon whale character. So this is where we left off in part 1. If you haven't seen part 1, then you can check it out with the link in the description. So in part 1 we did all of the modeling. So we created the base mesh and then we did the sculpting. So the modeling is finished, and so in this part we're going to be setting up the model for texture painting, and then after we texture paint it we'll be doing the lighting and the materials and rendering. As I said in part 1, if you'd like to help support me and this channel, you can purchase the project files for this tutorial on my Gumroad store, and you also get access to the tutorial files if you join my Patreon page. So checking out my Gumroad store and Patreon are great ways to help support the channel. And another great way to help support the channel here on YouTube is by checking out the YouTube memberships with the join button right down there next to the subscribe button. Now before we do the texture painting, we have to UV unwrap the object so that the texture knows how it's placed on the object. Now this object is a sculpt, so if I tab into edit mode, you can see that the topology is very high. So if you wanted to, you could watch a tutorial on how to do retopology in Blender so that you can retopologize the model and have much more clean topology. But I am not doing any animation, so all I want to do is set this up so that I can use it for texture painting. So I'm going to be using a UV unwrapping method where you don't actually have to retopologize the sculpt and you can set it up for texture painting. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to get the mesh's topology as low as possible, but still keep the original shape. So I'm going to select the object, and then I'm going to click on add modifier, and then I'm going to go right down here and I'm going to add the decimate modifier. So when we add the decimate modifier, it's going to get rid of more and more of the geometry, but it's going to keep the object shape. So on this ratio here, I can turn this way down to just something like maybe a 0.1, and that's going to get rid of a bunch of the topology. So the mesh is now much lower topology, but it still looks pretty much exactly the same. Now if you go into edit mode, you're not going to see the change, and that's because you first need to apply the decimate modifier. So I'm going to click on this arrow right down here, and then I'm going to click on the apply button to apply that. And it might just take a moment to apply. Alright, so it's been applied. So now if I press the tab key to go into edit mode, you can see the topology is much smaller, so it's a much less dense mesh. Now the topology still is very bad, and if you're wanting to use this for animation or use it in a game engine or something like that, then it would probably be better to retopologize the sculpt properly. But all I want to do is set this up so that I can texture paint it, so I'm just going to use this method. So we could actually get the topology even less. So in object mode, again, I'm going to click on add modifier, and I'm going to add another decimate modifier, but now that the topology is much less, I can just drag the ratio and you can see it's updating pretty fast. So I basically just want to drag this ratio as far down as I can while keeping the mesh's shape. So you can see right now it's getting pretty low quality. That's because we've cut out so much of the geometry. It doesn't really have much to work with. So I'm going to turn the ratio up even more. Maybe I'll turn it to something like a 0.5 or maybe like a 0.6. I'll actually go with a 0.6 and you can see how that's looking. So if you zoom way in, it's slightly low quality, so I think I might just turn that up a little bit more, maybe to like a 0.7. And then I'm going to click on the drop down right here and click on apply. So now if I press the tab key to go into edit mode, you can see it's gotten rid of even more of the geometry, but it's still kept more geometry where it needs it. So right here where it needs more geometry, it's kept that, but then right here where it's a bit more smooth, the topology is a bit less. Now I want to do that for this object here as well. Now this object we're not going to be texture painting, but I might as well get rid of some of the topology because you can see it is pretty high topology. So I'm going to click on add modifier. Let's go right down here and I'm going to add the decimate modifier, and then the ratio here, I'm just going to turn this way down to just like a 0.2. And I think I'll turn it even farther down to just like a 0.1 and then click here and then click on apply. So then I can tab into edit mode and you can see that is much lower topology, but it still keeps its shape. Alright, so now I just need to UV unwrap this object. So what I'm going to do is click right up here to go over to the UV editing tab. And then make sure you go into edit mode, and I'm going to press the A key to select everything. So I'm now going to press the U button, and that's going to bring up the UV mapping settings. And then I'm going to use the Smart UV Project. Now I want there to be a little bit of space in between the UV islands. So on this island margin here, I'm just going to turn this down to like a 0.01, and then I'm going to click on OK. And that way it's going to give a little bit of space between the islands. So you can see it's automatically UV unwrap the mesh, and this isn't really the best UV unwrap, but it's okay if all you want to do is just texture paint this. Now we do need to make sure there isn't any overlap, because if there's any overlap, then there's going to be issues when we're texture painting. So here in the UV editor, I'm going to press the A key, and that is going to deselect everything. And then I'm going to click right here on select, and then I'm going to go right down here and I want to click on the select overlap. And this is going to show us any areas that are overlapping. So if I press the period key on the numpad, that's going to zoom me into them, and you can see there are just 3 of them. So I just need to go in here and fix them, and they're usually really easy. So you can see there's a little bit of an overlap right here. So this is actually really easy to fix. What I can do is just select the endpoint. So select the endpoint of that island there, and then I can hit Control plus. So hit the Control plus, I'm hitting the plus on my numpad. So I'm just going to Control plus, and I'm just going to keep on doing that until I have a big piece selected. Then what I can do is I can press the V key, and the V key is going to rip those faces, or it's going to rip the UV island, and now it is a separate island. And now you can see that it's not overlapping, it's just kind of out here. So I'm just going to stick this right about there. So I'm going to do the same thing. So I'm going to press A to deselect everything. I can click on select, and then I can go right down here and click on select overlap. So I'm going to zoom in here, and you can see here's another one. So what I'm going to do is select that right there, and then I can hit Control plus again. Control plus, that's going to select more of them, and I'm just going to select that many, and then I can press the V key. The V key is going to separate it, and then I can press G to grab, and I'm just going to stick it right there. All right, A to deselect everything. Let's click on image, and then I can click on select overlap. And I'm just going to zoom in here, and you can see there's just one more. So I'm just going to click right here. If that's the right one, I'm going to press Control plus, and that is going to select more of that. And for something like this, what I could actually do is just continue to hit Control plus until that entire like circle is selected. And I could also manually just select it by holding down the Shift key and just kind of manually selecting some of these. So I'm just going to select those and kind of deselect these. So with all those selected, I can now press V, and then I'm going to bring that over there, just bring it somewhere where it's not overlapping the islands. And then again, click on select, select overlap, and there is no overlap. So there we go. The object is now UV unwrapped, so we can set it up for texture painting. So I'm going to now go over to the shading tab. Let's click over here on the shading tab, and we need to actually add a material before we texture paint. So let's click on the new button right here in the shader editor, and I can just call this whale. All right, so now we need to create an image that we can actually texture paint on. So what I'm going to do is press Shift A. Let's go to the search here, and I'm going to search for an image texture. Let's click on this image texture, and I'm going to drop it down here. And then I can take this color right here, and I'm going to plug this up to the base color. So now I'm going to click on the new button right here, and this is going to create a new image. So I'm going to click on new, and I can just rename this to like whale color. And then I want to texture paint with a 4K image, and that way it will be very high quality. So what I'm going to do is click and then drag down and then let go, and this will change both of the values at the same time. And I'm going to type in 4096 and then hit enter. So 4096 is very standard for a 4K texture. And then on the color here, we can choose whatever base color we want. So I'm going to change this to a nice blue color for our whale. So I'm going to make it a blue color and maybe just a little bit gray and maybe a little bit darker. And if you'd like to use the exact same color that I'm using, you can go to the color and you can click over on the hex value, and you can put in a hex value of 4A85D5. So that is the exact color that I'll be using for the base color. And then I will click on OK. All right, so we are now ready to do the texture painting. So just make sure you have this object selected, and we are going to click right over here on the texture painting workspace. Now, as I talked about in part 1 of this tutorial series, I am going to be using a drawing tablet for the texture painting because I find that it's much more easy and more enjoyable to use a drawing tablet for the texture painting. Now, you can use a mouse, but I do find a mouse much harder to use because you aren't able to make nice smooth strokes, and the posture is a bit weird because computer mice are really just made for clicking around on the screen. So if you can use a drawing tablet, that would be great, but if you don't have one, you can use a mouse. Now, if you're interested in purchasing a drawing tablet, then I will have some Amazon links in the video description to some tablets that I recommend, and those are Amazon affiliate links. So if you purchase something through the links, that will help me out, but with no extra cost to you. And I am going to be texture painting with my display tablet. So it is a monitor that I can actually texture paint on the screen, but you definitely don't need something that fancy. Even if you can just get one of those cheaper pad tablets where the pad tablet is down on the desk and then you look up on the screen and texture paint, that's going to be way better than using a mouse. So I will have an Amazon link in the description to a pad tablet as well that I highly recommend. All right, so here I am at my drawing tablet, and I'm over here in the texture painting tab. Now, I really don't want to see this 2D view because I'm going to actually be painting on the 3D mesh. So I'm just going to click and drag and make this much smaller so that I can't actually see it because I don't need it. And then I'm going to be using just the normal draw brush so I can press the T key to close this side panel. And then right over here, I actually don't really need to see this for now. So I'm just going to click and drag and make this much smaller just so that I can get a nice big space for the texture painting. So the navigation is the same, just like with sculpting. So I'm going to hover my pen over the drawing tablet surface, and then I'm going to click with the front pen button, and that is going to orbit around. So I'm just hovering my pen over the tablet surface, clicking with my front pen button to orbit, and then you can hold down the control key and click and drag with the pen button. That's going to zoom in and out, and then you can hold down the shift key and click and drag with the pen button, and that's going to pan you around. Now, something that's really important before you start texture painting is to turn on the symmetry, and that way when you paint, it's going to paint to the other side. So I'm just going to click with my front pen button, just click and pull this over here, or you can also scroll if you're using a mouse, and I'm going to make sure that the X symmetry is turned on. And that way, just for demonstration, if I start to paint over on this side, it's going to mirror it over to the other side. So I'll just press Ctrl Z to undo that. All right, so I'm going to start by texture painting the whale's belly. So I'm going to click with my pen and drag over, and right here there is a color. So I'm going to click on this color, and then I'm going to make this kind of a tannish color. So once you've selected the color that you want for the whale's belly, I'm just going to zoom in here and I'm just going to start to paint. So I'm just pressing down with my pen and I'm just going along here and painting all this. So I'm actually going to start by just kind of going around the outline and then I can fill it in. So I'm going to zoom way in, and you can press the F key to change your brush size. So I'm going to make my brush size pretty small, and then I can just kind of click and drag or press with my pen, and I'm just going to paint all along here, and I'm just going along the bottom of the lip. So the bottom lip is going to be the lighter color. So I'm just going along there, and let's press Ctrl S again to save, and then just keep going along there, just painting down there. We're going to go all the way to the end of the mouth. So just keep on painting there, and we're going to paint down. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint and have this kind of go down like this, and then I'm going to just kind of orbit or navigate right over here, and I'm going to bring this over, and I'm going to go way over here. So I'm just starting by painting the outline first. And let me press the F key to make my brush smaller. And I want the belly of the whale to kind of end right here. So right here, kind of at the end of the whale, kind of back here, I'm just going to have it kind of end here. So I'm just going to go around in a circle, just kind of painting. And then I will bring this out a bit farther. And I'm going to try to make the edges nice and smooth. So I'm just going along here, making those edges smooth. And let's just kind of bring that up there, going along and connecting that, and then I can just go in here and I can just paint all of this and fill it in. You can also press the F key to make your brush size bigger, and then I'm just going to fill all this in here. So just filling this all in with that color for the whale's belly, and make sure you don't close the Blender file until you've saved the image, because if you close the Blender file, then Blender's not going to save the image data. So make sure you save this image, and I'll show you how to do that once we are done with the texture painting. And then right here on the side, I want to make this a little bit more smooth. So I'm just going to go along here, kind of make that nice and smooth there, and going along there. Just kind of make that a nice smooth transition from the mouth going down to the belly. And then we can fill this all in just by painting. And this is pretty easy. We're just kind of filling this all in, filling this in with the tan color. All right, we are almost done there. Just have to fill in this last piece right there. So now I want to create some little stripes on the bottom of the whale's belly. So I'm going to press the F key to make my brush size smaller. And then I'm also going to click on this button right here. And this button is going to enable the pen pressure. So this way, let me just take this color here and I'm going to make it a darker color and make it a bit more brown. So something like that. So because we have the pen pressure enabled, now the harder I press, the bigger the brush is going to be. So you can see it's a bit bigger, but then when I press less on the tablet, the pen pressure is going to make that smaller. So I'm just going to press Ctrl Z to undo that, but I just wanted to show you. So when I press harder, then it's going to be bigger, but then when I press really lightly, that's going to be smaller. And the same thing is happening for the strength there because I have that button turned on. So I'm going to press Ctrl Z to undo that. So what I'm going to do now is kind of zoom over here to the side, and I'm going to just kind of draw a line right there. And we're just going to bring that down. And we're just going to texture paint that line kind of coming down there, keeping it somewhat thick kind of at the starting. And I think it is easier if you can just do most of it in one big line. And then as it goes farther back, it's going to get smaller and smaller. So I'm just going to make it get smaller and smaller towards the end. Let's make that a bit smaller, kind of going down there. You can kind of zoom in and that'll make it smaller as well. And then I'm just going to have it end kind of about there. And then you can go back and just kind of sharpen up any areas if you want to. So I'm just going back along the line there and drawing over any areas if I want to make it darker or thicker. So I now just want to do that 2 more times. So right here in the center, I'm going to click and drag, and then we will make that go in there. Make it slowly get smaller and smaller. All right, bring that in and have it coming down. And sometimes if I make 2 lines like this accidentally, I can just press Ctrl Z and that's going to undo the stroke there. So just kind of going along there, adding another line. And I think it's easier if you just do really big lines at the same time. We're going to make that smaller and smaller and then end kind of about there. And then just kind of going back there if you need to fix anything. All right, that's looking pretty good. So I just want to do that one more time. So right about here, I'm going to make one more. We'll make one more, have that going down there kind of in the center. Just kind of try to make it pretty even in the center there. And keep on going all the way down. And I feel like this would be quite hard with a mouse, and that's why I use a drawing tablet. It's also just very fun to use a drawing tablet, but it's also a lot easier because you're using a pen, and so you can have nice smooth strokes, whereas with a mouse it's much harder to do this kind of thing. All right, there we go. So let's just kind of zoom back out and look around. I think that looks pretty good. Now I also want to make the crease in the mouth just a little bit darker. So what I'm going to do is zoom in here, and I'm going to press the F key to make my brush size bigger. Let's also press the Control S to save the Blender file. And then I want to click right here on the color, and I'm going to make this a bit more brown and then make it a bit darker. And then I want to take the strength value and I want to turn that down quite a bit. So it's maybe only at 0.5, so it's like half as strong. And then I can just go along here, and actually I want to turn off the radius pen pressure because I want it to stay the same size. And then I'm going to go along here and I'm just going to darken that in there, kind of to make like a little bit of a crevice, almost like a fake ambient occlusion, just to make it look like it's a bit darker. So I'm just going to go along there. Maybe I'll turn the strength up a little bit more. And I'm just going to go along here. Let me actually go over here to the end of the mouth and just kind of darken that in a little bit, and then go along there and just add a little bit of a crease there in the center. All right, and there we go. So we've just added a little dark crease there in the center. Now right above the chin, I want to add kind of like a shadow. So what I'm going to do is just make this a little bit of a darker color, and I will turn the strength way down. So I'm going to turn the strength value way down on the brush, and I'm going to press the F key to make my brush bigger. And then I'm just going to go along here and make a very subtle shadow. Just make a little shadow there, right there, kind of where the chin is. Something like that. So I'm now going to be painting the eyebrows, and we are going to make those fully black. So I'm going to click on the color right here. I'm going to make this fully black. And then on the strength here, I'm going to turn this all the way up to 1. So I can zoom in here, and then I'm just going to press the F key to make my brush smaller. And I'm going to go along here, and just where the eyebrow is, I'm going to make that black. So I'm going to go along there, just kind of fill that in, kind of navigate over here to the side. We're just going to make that black eyebrow. And that's going to really pop out the eyebrow and make it more visible. Okay, and then just fill it in there just like that. See if I missed any spots and kind of zoom out, and there we go. So there is the eyebrow. All right, so the last thing that I'm going to be texture painting is some little like stylized dots, some little blue dots on the back of the whale. So what I want to do is go over here. Let me just click and drag with my pen, and I'm going to turn off the X symmetry because I want the dots to be random and I don't want them to be mirrored over. So now what I need to do is click and drag with my pen, go back over here, and I'm actually going to hover my mouse over this blue color, and then I'm going to press the S key, and that's going to go to the eyedropper, and I'm just going to then let go, and you can see it's going to select that blue color. So I now just want to click on the blue color, and I'm going to make it a little bit brighter, but then make it a bit of a stronger blue and bring it down so it's a little bit of a darker blue color. So something like that. All right, so now that we've set that to a darker blue color, I'm going to press the F key to make my brush a bit bigger, and then I can just add some random little dots in here. So I'm just going to go around in a circle and make that little dot, and I think I actually want to make that a bit darker, so I'm going to make it a bit stronger of a blue color and maybe just a little bit darker, and then I can just kind of go around in a circle. You can press the F key if you want to make your brush smaller. And I'm just going to make some little stylized kind of cartoony dots right there. So I'm going to create another one here. All right, maybe add just like another one here. And I'm only going to add these dots like on the back of the whale. So on the whale's back. So kind of maybe another one there. And let's maybe create a bigger one right here. So I'm just going around, maybe zoom in, just make a dot there. There's a bigger one. Maybe make a few smaller ones. So like a smaller one right there. And also maybe another smaller one like right up here. And maybe right over here, we'll make kind of a medium-sized one. So just kind of make a little bit of a bigger one right there. And again, you can use the F key to change the brush size. I'm just going to zoom in there, kind of paint that. Okay, that's pretty good. Let's zoom in here, add a few more right here. Maybe a little bit of a bigger one right there. And we'll do some kind of back here closer to the tail. So we'll make one there, maybe a little bit of a bigger one here. And maybe a few more small ones down here. And right back over here to the other side. I want to create a few more. Let's see, we don't have very many small ones over here, so maybe I'll make a few smaller ones right there. And then like right over here, make a little bit of a bigger one, but still kind of small. And right here on the whale's tail, I do think I want to add a few. So I will add a few here kind of behind the whale. Just add some here and there. And I like to leave kind of an even space between them. I don't want to have any too close or too far away from each other. So something like that. Maybe another one like right here. And just finishing this up, adding a few more here and there. Just kind of zoom out and see how that's looking. All right, and with that finished, the texture painting is done. So the texture painting for the whale is finished. So something that's really important whenever you finish the texture painting is to save the image. Because if you don't save the image as an external file on your computer, as a image file, then Blender will not save the data. So if you just open this back up, you can see here's our UV editing, and here's the actual 2D texture. So you need to click right here on image, and then we're going to click on save as. And I'm just going to save this as whale color, and right up here I'm going to save it as a JPEG just so that the file size is a bit smaller, and I will click on save as image. Alright, so we can now go back to the layout right here. I'm going to hold down the Z button and go into the material preview just so that we can see how that's looking. And I'm still using my drawing tablet, so to finish this off, I'm going to hop back over to my main setup. Alright, now before we do the materials, I am going to be setting up some lighting just so that we can preview the materials nicely. So I'm going to hold down the Z button and go up into the rendered view so I can preview this in the rendered view. And I am using Blender Eevee in this tutorial. You could use Cycles if you want to, but I'm going to be using Blender Eevee. And then to make Eevee look a little bit nicer, I'm going to turn on the screen space reflections and also the ambient occlusion. Those are two settings you can just check mark and they make Eevee look nicer. Now you can see it's very gray, and that's because we just have a gray world. So I'm going to be adding in the HDRI that I talked about at the beginning of the tutorial series. So I'm going to click right over here on the world properties. And if there isn't already a world, you can just click on the new button to add a new world. And then on the color here, I'm going to click on the yellow dot and I'm going to change this to the environment texture. And then we need to add in the environment texture. So let's just click on open. And then here is the Learner Park 1K HDR. And again, this is a free HDRI from polyhaven.com. So the link is in the description if you'd like to download the same one that I'm using. So I'm going to click on this and then I will click on open image. And you can see that already this is giving us some really nice lighting to preview our object. Now I don't want to be able to see the background just because it's a little bit distracting. So I'm going to click right here on the output properties, actually right up here on the render properties. And I'm going to go right down here and open up this film tab. And then under the film tab, I can click on the transparent button. And so that's just going to make the background transparent. So the HDRI is still there, but I just can't see it in the background. And then also right down here under the color management, I'm going to go right here to the view transform and I'm going to set this to a filmic. And then on the look here, I'm going to set this to high contrast. And this is just going to pop out the colors and make it more contrasty and make it a bit more saturated. Now I also want to add a camera. So I'm going to press Shift A. And let's go right down here and we're going to click on camera. And then I want to bring the camera right to where we are right here. So what I'm going to do is press Control Alt Numpad 0. And by pressing Control Alt Numpad 0, that is going to bring the camera to where we are. And then just make sure you have the camera selected by clicking right up here. And I can press G to grab. And I can also press G to grab and then double tap the Z key to move in and out. And I'm just going to bring this back here. And then I can also rotate rotate this by pressing R to rotate, and then hit Z to rotate it over on the Z axis. And then I also want to change the focal length of the camera, so I'm going to click right here on the object data properties, and that's going to go to the camera settings if the camera is selected. And right here on the focal length, I'm just going to change this to like a 90. I think 90 looks pretty nice. And then I can also rotate this on the Z axis, press G to grab. I can also press G and then hit the Z key twice and just bring that out. And then another thing that I want to do is I want to have this render as a square image just because I think that looks nicer. So I'm going to go right here to the output properties, and then I want to use a pretty high resolution. So I'm going to be using a resolution of 2560 by 2560, and that's going to be a 2K resolution image. But really you can just set this to whatever resolution you want, and this is in Blender Eevee, so it should render pretty fast. Alright, now the lighting we have isn't actually very bright, and so I want to add in some more lights. So I'm going to press Shift A, and let's go right down here to light, and then I'm going to add the area light. So I can press G to grab and R to rotate, and we can just kind of rotate this around. And I can also press S to scale, and we can scale this light up. And then let's click right here to go to the object data properties of the light, and I want to change the power. So I want to turn the power up to make it much stronger of a light. And actually on the power here, I want to type in 1000. So I'm going to type in 1000, and then I can just scale this up and bring it back a little bit. Now I also want to add some rim lights behind the whale just to kind of make the whale pop out of the background. So with this light selected, I can press Shift D to duplicate, and then I can press R to rotate, and navigate down here and press R to rotate, and I'm going to put this light behind the whale. And so if I press the 0 on the numpad and I zoom in here, you can see this is what the rim light is doing. So it's adding this little bright light on the side of the whale, and that's really nice. And rim lights are just really nice because they kind of pop the character out of the background and make it look nicer. And then I also want to add like 2 more rim lights, one over here and also one down here. So I'm going to press Shift D to duplicate, and then double tap the R key. That's going to enable the trackball rotation. I'll just kind of rotate that over, just kind of bring it back here so that we have a nice rim light there on the front of the whale. And I think I'll bring that a little bit closer so it's a bit brighter. And then I'll press Shift D to duplicate, kind of bring that down there, double tap the R key, and that's going to turn on the trackball rotation. And I'm just going to rotate this down here so that we have a little rim light right down there on the bottom of the whale. So now let's set up the materials. So I'm going to click right over here on the shading tab. I'll press the 0 on the numpad to go into the camera view, and I can hold down the Z button and move up into the rendered view to preview it. So let's first do this water material. So I'm going to click on the water object. I'm going to click on new, and I can just rename this to water. And then to make this look like water, I'm going to take the base color and I'm going to make it a very bright light blue color. And then I'm also going to take the transmission value and I'm going to turn this up to like a 0.7. And now that I've turned that up to a 0.7, it looks like some very stylized water. And I also want to turn the roughness down. So on the roughness value right here, I'm going to turn this down to just like a 0.3, and that'll make it much more shiny. And then also let's take the specular value and turn that up so it is even more reflective. And there we go. So it's a very simple stylized water shader. And I do think that looks quite nice. Especially with the rim light shining through it, it kind of brightens it up and makes it look really nice. All right, so now let's do the eye for the whale. So just select the eye, and then I'm going to click on new here, and I'm going to rename this material to like eye black, because this is going to be the black part of the eye. So on the base color here, I'm going to set this to fully black, and then on the roughness value, I'm going to turn that all the way down to 0 so it looks very reflective and shiny, and it makes the eye look wet. So that's pretty cool, but I do just want to add a little white part in the eye. So I'm going to click on the eye, and then I will press the period on the numpad to zoom into it. And then I will press the tab key to go into edit mode. And what I want to do in edit mode is select everything, and then I'm going to double tap the R key, and that is going to do the trackball rotation, and I'm just going to rotate this down to about there. And then what I also want to do is add a loop cut right in here. So I'm going to press Control R to add a loop cut. I'm going to click right here, drag down, and then click to place that. So now what I'm going to do is press 3 on the top of my keyboard, or you can also scroll right over here and you can click here on the face select. And then I'm going to now press B for the box select, and I'm going to drag a box around all of those center faces. And then I also want to select all the faces around these faces, so I can just press Control plus. And when you press Control plus, it's going to select all the faces around the selection. So I'm now going to click right down here, and this is going to go to the material properties. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. clicker. And then right here, this is the material slots. And right now we just have the eye black. So I'm going to click on this to add a new material in the slot. And then I want to click right here and I'm going to add the eye black. Now I want to duplicate this so it's a separate material. So I can click on this button right here and that'll duplicate the material. And then I can just rename this to eye white. So eye white. So now this is a separate material, and so I want to assign the eye white to that selection. So I can click on the assign button to do that. Now nothing has really changed. Let me just tab to go into object mode. You can see it doesn't look any different. That's because I just need to change the color. So I can click on this base color right here and make it fully white. And there we go. So now we have a little white area in the whale's eye. All right, press Ctrl S again to save the project. And I now just want to do a little bit of editing on the whale material. So I'm going to select the whale and then let's edit the shader nodes. So I want to make the whale a little bit more reflective. So on the roughness value here, I'm going to change this to like a 0.4 so that the whale is a bit more reflective. And then I also want to add a little bit of procedural noise on this object. So let's press Shift A and I'm going to go to the search here and I'm going to search for the noise texture. Let's click on the noise texture and I'm going to drop it down here. Then I can also press Shift A. Let's go to the search here and I'm going to search for a texture coordinate. So you can start to type in texture coordinate. I'm going to add the texture coordinate node and let's stick this back here. So I want the object to be going into the vector and then I want this noise texture to give a little bit of bump on the material. So let's take the factor value and I'm going to put that into the normal. Now we need to convert this to normal data because this is black and white data, but this needs to be normal data. So let's press Shift A. I'm going to go to the search here and I'm going to search for the bump node and let's drop the bump node right in there. And then I can take the factor and I want to put that into the height value. So now let's play around with the noise texture settings. So on the detail here, I'm going to turn the detail all the way to the max, which is 15. And then on this roughness value, I'm going to turn this down to like a 0.3. So it has less roughness. All right. Now this is of course way too strong. So I want to make it less strong. So on the strength value right here, I'm going to turn this way down to like a 0.05. So it's much less strong. So now you can see there's just a little bit of subtle noise on the skin of the whale. And I think I want to make that even less strong. So let's turn the strength value maybe to like a 0.03. That's a bit better. All right, so there we have it. So we are ready now to render out the image. So I'm just going to press Ctrl S again to save, and then you can press F12, or you can also click right here on render, and I'll click on render image. All right, and it finished, and that did not take very long because it's in Blender EV. So now I just want to do a little bit of compositing to add a background. So I'm going to click right here and go to the compositing tab, and then I can also click on use nodes to use the compositing nodes. And then let's click and drag and make this timeline smaller because I don't need the timeline. So to add a background, I'm going to press Shift A. I'm going to go to the search here and I'm going to search for an alpha over node. Let's click on the alpha over node and drop it here. And then I'm going to bring the render layers out. And I also want to be able to preview this in the background. So I can press Shift A. I'm going to go to the search here and I can search for the viewer node, or if you have the node wrangler add-on enabled, you can just Control Shift and select the alpha over. But you can also just press Shift A and add a viewer node. And then let's just take the image and we're going to plug that up to the image on the alpha over so we can preview that in the background. And then also let's take the image and I'm going to put that into the bottom image of the alpha over. Now this is really big, so to make it smaller, you can press V and V is going to zoom out. And then Alt V is going to zoom in. All right, now if all you wanted to add was a color in the background, you can just take this top image right here on the alpha over, and you can make this to any color you want, like maybe a dark blue. I want to add kind of like a fade in the background. So I'm going to press Shift A. Let's go to the search here, and I'm going to search for an ellipse mask. So I'm going to start to type in EL and then add the ellipse mask. Let's drop the ellipse mask right here. Now, when you click on the ellipse mask, you're going to see that little square there. And so I just want to change the width and the height to make that ellipse mask pretty big, kind of like that. All right, so I now want to take this mask here and I want to put that into the top image. Now, what I want to do is blur this and then also change the colors. So let's press Shift A. I'm going to go to the search here and I'm going to first search for the blur node. I'm going to click on the blur node and let's just drop it right in here after the ellipse mask. So then right here on both the X and Y, I can click drag down, and then let go, and that'll change both of the values at the same time. And I want to blur this a lot, so I'm going to type in like 1000 and enter. Now that might take a little while to composite. You can see it's kind of taking a while. You don't have to turn it up to 1000 if you don't want to, because that is kind of high, but I want to change it to 1000. So you can see what this is doing. It's basically making a gradient from white to black, and so it's black kind of around the sides, but then it's white in the middle. Now I want it to be watercolor, so I want to change it to blue. So I'm going to press Shift A. Let's go to the search here, and I'm going to search for a color ramp. Let's click on the color ramp, and I'm going to drop it right in here after the blur. So now I can change both of these colors, and that's going to change the two colors here. So on the black tab right here, I'm going to make this brighter, but then I'm going to make it a very strong blue color. Actually, maybe a little bit less saturated, maybe like a little bit darker, so kind of like a darker blue. And then on this white tab right here, I'm going to click on this color, and I'm going to make this one a lighter blue, so something like that. And we'll just wait for that to load up, and we can see it coming in. And I think I want to make this color a little bit darker, so let's see how that looks. All right, so there we have it. So there's the finished image. So to save this image, what you can do is you can press F11, and F11 is going to take you back here to the image editor. And then to preview the final composite, I'm going to click right here, and this is going to open this up, and let's go over here, and we're going to go to the viewer node. So if we go to the viewer node, that is going to preview the final composite. And then to save this image, we can click on image, and then I'll click on save as. And I'll just save this as final render, and I'll just save this in the folder with my other files, and I will click on save as. So with that all finished, this is going to wrap it up for this tutorial. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and thank you so much for watching. And again, if you'd like to help support me and this channel, you can purchase the tutorial files on my Gumroad store and on my Patreon page as well. And if you'd like to watch more of my sculpting and texture painting tutorials, then I will have links in the description to my sculpting tutorial playlist and my texture painting tutorial playlist. But I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and thank you for watching.